Okay, so for this part, what you're going to do is like take a color, doesn't really matter what color. I mixed like a turquoise-ish blue here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brush some on. Just try to get a smooth application of paint here. And I'm going to let that start to dry a little, but not too much. And I'm going to do a wash here. The next thing you're going to do is take, I'm going to use the same color. You can use a different color if you want. And I'm going to put a saturated, this color saturated here. Now, I'm going to dip my brush in water, blot it so that I don't have too much water, and I'm going to lighten that wash so that I'm doing a graduated wash. And then I'm going to blot it on there again. I don't know if you can see that. No, you can't. I'm blotting it on my rag. I'm not going to get that into the frame, but you know what I'm doing. And add lighter value so that you're just getting lighter as you go along. Oops, I touched that. And blot that. But phthalo is a staining color. I have phthalo and lemon yellow for this mix. And pull more down. I think I'm going to blot my brush and get clean water and then come the rest of the way. And I could go over this because that's waterproof ink that I used. So you want to make sure that you use waterproof ink if you're going to go over it. Blooms. So now a bloom, what a bloom is, was before your paint is dry, you can take water on your brush, just clean water, and touch it to the paint, and it disrupts the surface and creates blooms. Every color is different. Some colors will bloom more than other colors. This one isn't blooming as much, but you'll see a huge difference when it's dry. And that's why if you're going to glaze, like put another layer over your watercolor, you always want to wait till one color is dry before you do the other. Here you can see where I have a lot of water, I'm getting those blooms. If I didn't want those to be there while this is still wet before it completely dries, I could just move the pigment around so that I don't get those blooms like that. And if I wanted it to be darker, I could just charge more pigment up here. And you can see that the watercolor the pigment doesn't always stay right where you put it. And every color is going to be a little bit different. So just because one color behaves one way with these exercises doesn't mean that all the colors will, because every color is different. So you might want to not use a mix when you do this so that you could learn about each of the colors independently, because then you will know that, oh, that has phthalo blue. That is not going to make very nice blooms maybe, because so far those don't look like very nice blooms. So dispersion. Dispersion is when you take your brush, and this is, my water's dirty. I'm going to pull that up and get clean water. clean water. Well, paint is in my brush. Clean it in the clean water. Try again. Pick that up. Okay, clean water. That's why you want to clean your brush a lot, because, or refresh your water, because my clean water became my brush, my water to clean my brush sometimes too, and that didn't work out too well. So here, pretty much just water, still has a little tiny bit of pigment in it, but what you have is water, and you want to have it so that when you lift and look at it, you can see a sheen, but it's not like puddles. So making sure there's no puddles, but everything is just a nice sheen, and I have dry spots over here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this color. I need more of it. I need it to be more liquidy. And I might add, I just might make it more of the phthalo blue. And I'm just going to drop it in, and you can see that's like its dispersion rate. How much does it move across the page? And as it dries, you'll see. Let's do a really tiny one. It's not so tiny. I have a lot of paint on my brush, so it's hard to do anything too tiny. So that's dispersion, what happens when you drop your paint into just water. And you could also do it, let's see, with a lighter value. So the lighter values travel more because they have more water in them, probably. Okay, so this one we're going to do last. This one, what we're going to do, and see, you can see I used too much water, and that's why I have that bloom right there. That's from too much water. And I'm going to just take this turquoise color again and brush it on here. So what we're going to do is put some, sometimes it's paint, I've noticed it's the watercolor paper. You almost have to push the paint into it. This watercolor paper is cellulose because more professional watercolor paper is cotton, 100% cotton, but it's quite expensive because it's usually handmade or hand pressed. So, well, no, there's a lot of machine pressing now, but it's expensive. So cellulose paper is good for students. It's not too pricey. If you have watercolor paper, you might use that instead. But this works fine. Just had to push it in a little bit. Now, it's kind of tricky, this, you have to make sure that it's right. Not too wet, not too dry. I think now, but my salt is over here. I have gourmet salt right now, so this is a little coarser than regular salt, but you can also just use regular salt. And what I'm doing is I'm just dropping some in. And depending on what color you're trying this with, try it with different colors, and you can see what happens with other colors. What happens is that you get a texture from the salt. I think I have this has more dramatic salt texture on it here. This is a salt texture. I showed you this before. This is a bloom. So you can see how these can become really beautiful things that you can use, techniques that you can use in your watercolor, but you want to be in control of them. So the first way to be in control of them is to know what causes them. Why does that happen? And that's kind of what you're doing here on this page. So now one of the things that what I'm going to do is a lot of times people go, but I don't have any blacks and I don't have any browns. But you do, because you can mix it from the colors that you have here. So what I'm going to do is take this, because I still have a lot of paint on here, and I'm just going to use this still, like for the demo I'm going to do on Wednesday. But right now, or Monday, depending on what class you're in. So I'm going to spray this just so that some of this water that has paint starts to run, but my dots stay there. And I'm going to sort of encourage that flow with the brush, kind of train these colors, because I can clean the dots off later, but get some of all of the color to flow down. And if you just use tiny dots and you just have tiny bits of dots left, what you can do is just mix it all together for this. And this is kind of just going to show you that when you mix all your colors together, and everybody might have a slightly different color, but I'm going to see what I came up with. There's a... and it's pretty close to a black. Oh, I picked up a little bit of red right there. That's in my brush. I'm going to clean that. It was probably a dot in that corner. So depending on what colors you have more of left over when you do this, you might get a darker color that leans a little bit more to green or leans a little bit more to blue. This one leans a little bit more to the red, probably because I picked up that red. When I first put it down, it was really right dead center gray pretty much. This leans a little bit to the red. And if I didn't use so much water, it would be darker. But that gives you an idea of how you can mix your colors to pretty much get whatever color you want. So, just trying to make it a little bit smoother, or pick up the excess water so that it doesn't bloom. And you can see what happens when you drop water on watercolor that is not yet dry. I went over these and I glazed them, meaning that I just put the same color over it on the bottom half again. So it's a little more saturated. I probably used too much water. See that bloom? Looks like the phthalo, this is the phthalo blue. Looks like the phthalo blue has a tendency to bloom. All right, so that's the end of the video, and have fun.